It is 10:41 a.m. We will begin this work session of Lake County Board of County Commissioners. One item on the agenda today is discussion and planning of the mine closure fund for Lake County. This will be led by Adam Ducharme, Tourism and Economic Development Director. I see we are joined by Nell from
We're in, it's fine.
Okay, Nell from Climax, our favorite person from Climax. Okay, Adam, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, and I apologize.
That's alright.
Can we pull up that presentation?
yeah, it's at the bottom of the PowerPoint. Oh, there you go.
Let me screen share.
Okay, and Rebecca will be jumping on in just a moment. Is it okay if I sit up there?
Yes.
If you could just let people.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm actually gonna grab my computer real quick, just so I can have my notes. Here we are. Right, excellent. Thank you all so much for your time, and Rebecca, if you just wanna say hello to everyone, I'm sure you can see us and we can see you on the corner of the screen there, so if you just wanna say hello and give an introduction to sort of who you are and your background, that would be awesome.
Sure. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for letting me join for this section of your meeting. My name is Rebecca Darling, and I have about 20 years of experience in the mining sector, mining industry, from early exploration all the way through to the discussion I think you're all going to focus on today with closure and post-closure. And just excited to help you a little bit along the way and be a thought partner. This is such an important part of the mining life cycle, and it's so important to community. So I'm grateful for the opportunity just to weigh in a little bit and provide some thoughts if that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah, just for a little bit of context, and I did get an opportunity to chat with Nell about this as well. Rebecca is actually friends with Sarah Berkeley, who owns and operates Symbiosis Gear, which is they make custom backpacks, or they make backpacks for folks who thru hike and who do backpacking, any type of backpacking, and they are based in Leadville. Her company is based in Leadville, and she's very interested in sort of growing her business in our community, and she's really inspired by, you know, how much of a connection we have to the trail community, as well as the work of Melanzana and kind of the legacy of Melanzana. So Sarah, when I first met with her to talk about her business, she mentioned Rebecca and Rebecca's background, and I had an amazing conversation with Rebecca just about her area of expertise and her background, and she's already been such an awesome resource in terms of being able to sort of share what exists in terms of resources that we can leverage for just thinking about the future of the mine. So why we need to plan now, right? There is a end of life that will happen, especially with the above ground mining operations at Climax. So, you know, I really want the math to pencil out where they can go underground and we can continue to have an amazing partnership with Freeport-McMoRan for the next 100 years. But regardless of that, I think that having these conversations and sort of thinking through how we can all work together and be the best partners to each other, right? Because Freeport needs input from us, and we need to sort of understand what types of questions to ask and sort of where we should be and how we should be setting ourselves up. And then on top of that, the biggest one is just realizing that, and Nell gave me this term that is now stuck in my head, is like, for all intents and purposes, we are currently living on our bonus, right? We have this $14 million in sort of revenue that comes to the county based on extraction, based on sort of the operations that are happening currently above ground with Climax. And so when we think about our future and we think about planning for an eventual closure of the mine, we need to be thinking about how are we going to, let's just, call it live without that $14 million, and what does that look like? What does the transition look like? How can we do this in the most effective way possible so that none of us are caught off guard?
14's an all-encompassing number, right? That's like
Currently.
payrolls, the taxes, the other, a million different ways that the mine contributes to our economy, not just like our tax base.
Proceeds, that's proceeds,
That's just the tax base?
proceeds and
That
assessed
number's way
land value.
bigger than I remembered, I apologize.
Me too, I thought it was around 5
Well,
last year.
probably to the county directly, maybe it's 5, but the taxes that we pay to Lake County as a whole.
Like the
School
proceeds,
district and CMC are the other two taxing entities who benefit from Climax.
the mills.
Mhm.
And in fact, that's sort of like a big part of why we're talking through this too, is, I'm gonna be advocating that we actually sort of get together with our partners that also benefit, the folks who receive those mills, and sort of start to think through their understanding on the reliance of those mills as well. Rebecca, this is sort of the biggest thing that we just need to consider, and again, this comes from sort of Rebecca's job at Newmont, was to sort of work on these types of projects when it comes to mine closure, and it's kind of the onus is on us to think critically about this socioeconomic transition. And there are some incredible resources, the ICMM resources, and there are links to all of this stuff in the presentation. And I now have, I think I downloaded like 30 or 40 different PDFs with things that I'm starting to comb through to understand exactly how we can understand and leverage all these resources. But Rebecca, is there anything that sort of comes to your mind in terms of things we should be thinking about, knowing we have, a decade plus?
International.
There's a lot of things, but I think the early and often is the best thing to do, because it gives you time, you in the community, time to think about what do you want your economy to look like and your community to look like in a post-mine economy. And so I'm not sure if I understand if it's 14 or 5 million, but either way, those are big numbers that are going to end at one point, right? And so how do you fill that in? What do you want it to look like? And what do you not want it to look like? So you don't want boarded up, shops because people lost their jobs and they moved out, right? And the brain drain and the people drain. But then I also learned you don't want to be, the next Vail or Breckenridge. You want to keep your community values and the way your community feels. And so having where you're aiming for, and then a runway of 10 years to think about how you get there, and what is the role of Climax and Freeport to help you get there as you transition. So that early and often is really important. It's also hard because 10 years feels far away, really. I mean, I think everybody in this room knows how fast time goes the older you get, but still 10 years feels like a bit of a runway. And so you put it off, you go to other meetings, you've got immediate things that are facing your community. So I think a few things, sorry, I can geek out about this all the time, but I think one of the things is don't count on the company to do it for you. And that's not because Freeport's a bad company. It's that their focus isn't going to be on this. This is your focus. They'll come to the table. They're good partners. They want it to go well. But if you drive it, it will turn out better for you. than expecting them to do it. Also, they're not gonna start thinking about it until much closer to closure, because they're still looking at opportunities and optionality. So they're not gonna focus on it 10 years out. No company really does. And so if you guys are doing that and you're asking the questions and you're bringing them to the table, then they'll show up meaningfully. I mean, I know a lot of people at Freeport have worked with them for years, like alongside them and in other committees and things. They're a good company, they'll do it, but you've really gotta.
Yeah, and I obviously, for the record and in general, I think that it's important to note that Nell's job is to literally be that human for us. So I have all the faith in the world that we have the best person sitting with us, alongside us, to help us and advocate with us and for us. So when we talk about days, we're talking, I mean, in general, like, as much as I worked for publicly traded companies before, so I know that, like, Nell's not sitting on the board of directors sort of bean counting, but at the end of the day, when it comes to sort of helping us and thinking through this transition and being a really great thought partner, that Nell's not the they.
Yeah,
when we
we've
talk
had
about
a person in this role since before the mine even formally reopened.
Yeah.
You know, even when we were kind of not sure about, the 2008, 2010, 2012, stutter, Tara Hosick was still kept her role. You know, they had hired for that position, we weren't really sure how the construction was going or the global market was going, and she stayed, right? So we've been here since the beginning. She had some more time on her hands, right? And we got the EDC going and we got a bunch of things going on way early back then, so I would say that that's our approach and that's always been our approach. It's our approach in every single program.
Nice. Alright, so going back over here. And actually, let me share. Sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. Go to the next slide, please.
Has Lake County ever done a strategizing or played war games kind of about like, hey, what's our budget look like if we take $5 million out of this right now?
Not that I know of.
Be an interesting exercise.
That's kind of the important conversation that needs to happen.
Yeah.
That's why I use the analogy of having a bonus or having
What is
something else that's coming in on this side, like you wouldn't run your personal life.
Yeah.
You would try to say, I wanna make sure I've got these bills paid, the basics paid, right?
Yeah, in a worst case scenario, let's see how we would do this, just,
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you don't invest in a new car or don't put a new roof on your house or don't do some of those things, but you don't consistently
Should be able to use the
just
keyboard
live
button.
off that.
I'm not just such a Mac
You're
person.
thoughtful.
right.
Right, you might say, I know I've got this coming in this year, what of these 6 things are important, right? And getting a new roof and also going on vacation might both be important,
Yeah, like
right?
Netflix gotta go,
Exactly, so I think that that's kind of the piece we're sort of trying to look through, is just to say, look, things happen and you have to make strategic investments in the future. But you've gotta keep the lights on day in and day out, right? And so how do you kind of look at a budget that's maybe a little more normalized towards where the future could be headed and how well can you live within that range? But at the same time, what are the strategic investments you're making so that the whole doesn't feel quite so big at the end? You've invested in your economic diversification, you've made sure that, your housing programs and everything else that kind of is gonna keep going, but takes money time over time and might not have an ROI that's immediate, but is an investment. That's the kind of stuff I think that we really need to be having conversations about. I don't know your budget inside and out, right? It's gonna look different every single year, but it's kind of like, what's the bare bones, everything we gotta do every single year? What's the probably have to do, right? And what's a wish list we can, chip away at so that it's not an emergency?
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think, what you're talking about with war games type effort, I think that's a lot of what sort of I'm gonna end up advocating for in here, is sort of like us standing that group up. sooner rather than later. So, I mean, in terms of like, what does responsible mine closure look like, right? Collaborative and stakeholder driven, so it's not just the BOCC or Nell or, any counterparts at Freeport-McMoRan saying what it is collaborative, it is stakeholder driven, we're sort of pulling in experts and sort of making sure it's integrated into the mine life cycle, so we're staying on top of and aware of, any and all plans and as the amount of revenue that molybdenum represents for Freeport-McMoRan, we're kind of aware of those types of things. That is something that I've started checking quarterly just for fun. And then covers the economy, society, and the environment. And with that, here's the reality as we know it. We have 10 plus years expected operation. It's operated by Freeport-McMoRan. Our closure timing is uncertain, but there are mine plans, but we have to, all these things sort of feel like there should be an asterisk with them. And then, starting to begin that process in earnest now is our best path forward, right? When's the best time to buy a house? Today. And it's like, when's the best time to plan for your retirement? Today. And those are the things that I feel like really apply, and something that I would like to see us start to focus on a really substantive way, especially with this new board and a lot of the sort of professionalism that we're bringing to Lake County government. I think now is like a very good time for us to be taking these steps. And we do, our government, Lake County government does play a critical role in this, especially because we can be a really good thought partner for our partners who receive the mills and receive revenue, receive benefits from the mine currently. And so what's our role? Convene stakeholders, advocate for this early planning, collaborate on shared post-mine vision, and then secure funding. So if we identify needs, if we need the roof and the vacation, and we know that there's gonna be gaps, starting to identify funding sources to sort of figure out what that looks like. And then the mine closure fund planning, that's one of the biggest pieces of all this. And one of the reasons why we wanted to get this in front of the commissioners before our budget cycle is closed for 2026 is to really kind of think about how we're leveraging and utilizing and growing the mine closure fund, and how much effort and resources we're putting towards that. So tools and resources, again, these are just an explanation of all of the resources that are linked right here in the presentation, and the International Council of Mining and what's the other one? Metals. That closure guide it's really slick. It's really cool, and the case studies that are in there are really, really great. Leave it to New Zealand to provide some pretty cool frameworks. The social transition framework, I think, I found a lot of value in it. It really spoke to me in terms of how they think about the relationship with the community, and sort of like trying to lift up the community and have the community be at the table. And then the Mine Closure Hub has a ton of awesome resources and glossaries and guidance, and the case studies from around the world are really great. And then there's just a link to one case study in particular that came from that that feels applicable. But again, more than happy to sort of I have all the PDFs, and I'm happy to provide a resource on Teams so that we can kind of all collectively have access to these things together as we think about it. So and Rebecca, I don't know if there's anything you want to say on those resources.
They are really important resources, and Newmont, if you could go back, Adam, just for a second, so I have, so the ICMM closure guide is new, and they have a social transitions piece. They've updated the closure guide to really emphasize the importance of early and integrated planning. And those closure guides are for the companies, right? ICMM is a member association. So it's good for a community to look at what the industry is saying is best practice to itself. The Mine Closure Hub was something that Newmont supported as part of a consortium of companies, and that is written for communities. And so that's the sort of, from your perspective, how to look at it. So there's a real breadth of information here. I know it can feel overwhelming, but there is some really good stuff to inspire and the art of the possible for your community in your post-mine economy. And then also the other piece is it helps you ask really good questions of industry. And I'll be really blunt. I've worked in industry for 20 years. Unfortunately, there is only a handful of cases where we have successfully socioeconomically transitioned a mine, right? So we've gotten very good at environmentally and technically closing them, but we perpetually drop the ball. And there's lots of reasons for that. And I could make lots of excuses and I could, give you lots of things. But the biggest way to ensure that doesn't happen is for you all to drive it and to do that with a multi-stakeholder working group or task force or however you're going to call it is really important. A couple of other things I want to point out that came up in the conversation with Adam is you guys, I feel like from what little I know, and I haven't invested a ton of time, you're in a really good place. Your economy is already diverse. So you've got tourism, you've got the mining piece, and I forgot the third leg of the stool that Adam talked to me about, but I remember thinking, wow, they're in a good spot because many, many communities are 100% reliant on the mine and the indirect of the mine. So the employees, there's restaurants because employees live there and they take their families out or whatever the indirects are. But you guys are starting off in a really good place. One, two, that you're thinking about it already is fantastic. And then three, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong here, you are now working on your comprehensive plan or updating it, I think. And so what's that?
Yeah, that's correct. Mhm.
So if you're working on that and you're already future thinking and what, the roof that you have to put on and the electricity bills and where you want to be in 10 years, to weave the thought around climax closing potentially in 10 years while you're doing that comprehensive plan work is awesome. So what I would say is you're starting off on really good footing and way further ahead than a lot of other communities that I've seen and worked with. The last thing I would say is mine closure is a very uncertain thing. So Freeport, their business model is to get the most out of every asset for as long as they can. And so they are right now looking at how to do that across all of their portfolio. So they may find a way to extend the life of Climax. Another possibility is they may sell it. Freeport is a very large company that has what we call an ASIC or a large overhead, let's say. If they sell it to a company that could extend the mine life cycle or the life of mine, then jobs stay around longer, everything, great. Because some companies can come in and run the mine at a cheaper all-in sustaining cost. That's a possibility. They could say, you know what, actually molybdenum, and I'm making this up a little bit, but molybdenum isn't bringing in what we need it to. We're going to shut this mine earlier. Like their life of mine and that 10-year runway is as of today. So the more planning you all do, the more resilient you will be to their fluctuations and the variance in their plans. So again, I think you guys are starting at a really great spot. But you've got some work to do ahead of you. And I think dovetailing it with the comprehensive planning will be a really great advantage for you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so yeah, and this is kind of what we're saying is this kind of is a really great opportunity. We're positioned well with the One Community Project and with how we think about the currently non-defined third leg of the stool that we who we want to be when we grow up. What are the other ways we want to diversify? Because as I always say, if tourism represents 30% of our economy, if I grow that to 75% tomorrow, I will be run out of town on a rail. So just because that's been made very clear to me by multiple aspects of the community that we do not want to be our surrounding resort communities. How do we diversify? How do we preserve our heritage as a mining community? How do we think about fostering resilience and creating jobs and thinking about okay, if there are 400 people that work at Climax, is there an opportunity to diversify and think about how those folks with that set of skills and that labor force, how could they potentially be integrated into a new opportunity, a new industry, a new vertical that we don't currently have. So next steps for Lake County in this process, I think the biggest one is to create a mine closure working group. And this would be, made up, this would be after the One Community project, and it would be, in my mind, if we could start in like Q1, Q2 of 2026 to just sort of convene a meeting and sort of set the groundwork of, okay, here's what we identified coming out of the One Community project, and here's where we are. And, again, being able to pull in those community partners that are also, that would also be impacted by mine closure from the standpoint of the mills and revenue coming in. That would be awesome. And obviously doing it, like having, in my perfect world, having an outside organization like the EDC chamber, as well as Lake County government, as well as Freeport McMoran, all of us at the table and starting to do that work in sort of a war games type of way, in a way of actually thinking through kind of like what are the scenarios, what are the possibilities, and not in the doom and gloom way, but in the opportunity way. Whew, that would be remarkable. That would be really, really feels like the right move for us. And then seeking planning grants, again, this is like this is probably number 5 on the list of but the point is like starting to identify, okay, are there planning grants we want to do to be able to engage with subject matter experts to help us? And then create a mine closure fund investment plan. I know, we have the mine closure fund, and there's a lot of discussion around what we do with that fund, but coming up with a really solid plan. And in my mind, it would be amazing if we could find a way to have that, how we structure that investment plan based on input from, it's Lake County government as well as sort of folks within the mine closure working group that could help. Ultimately, it's Lake County government's fund, it is their plan, not suggesting anything other than that, but just being able to sort of have thought partners there.
Is the fund just sitting there right now, or is it actively being invested?
There's money in there and they haven't actively invested. I don't think they did the last year, and I don't know what they did the year before that. It's partially why Adam had mentioned this to me. I was like, let's go ahead and have this discussion now so we can start to think about what does it look like to actually put money in the mine. I will say with this looming, I was really intentional, and the staff I brought on to help, be a support and management to directors in certain groups, and intentionally hired an assistant county manager who is from a town where the mine and the mill closed, has a strong grant writing background, and also understands a lot of the economics of a mine closing so that they can be working with Adam to help create this group and this plan. So we could sort of have a better plan for what does it look like to actually invest in the mine closure fund with a plan for what else we would do in conjunction with just putting money back. So yes, there's money in it. Is it enough? No. Has it been actively continued to be at the forefront of investment decisions? It does not appear so in the last years to me.
So it's not growing, it's just
No.
sitting in an account somewhere,
I'd
maybe
have
at
to
like
check with
0.01%
Patrick
or
if he
something.
put it in an investment account. I'm certain he did, but I'm not sure. I'd have to really work with
Just
him.
what even options we have there, I guess there's gotta be some legal boundaries on what we're allowed to, can you dump it into this might sound absolutely silly, cause it's not my area of expertise, but like, can you dump it into a high yield savings account so it's actually growing a little bit instead of nothing, or?
You can. That's kind of an interesting question. I can't, and the person who makes those decisions currently is your treasurer.
Patrick.
So it would be great to have an investment plan, and we would really need to work with, Will and I have had some discussions, but ultimately that's an elected position, so where they will invest it is not necessarily.
Are there any parameters on that funding? Like in terms of investment or what can and can't be done with it?
With the mine closure fund, I'd have to read the language of what created the fund, which is actually, we're looking at all of our funds currently.
Because there might be, and depending on how you all decide to proceed, one first step might be going back to Freeport and updating and amending that so that you can have some governance around it and how it's invested. I'm sure they would be open to the conversation, but it may have been written at one time with a certain mindset and it might need some updating now.
I don't know, go ahead, can you say what you were
Yeah.
saying? Do you want?
We can follow up with you
Yeah.
Okay.
separately about that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I'd love to understand that better.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, and then the next would be sort of launching an engagement campaign again, just sort of being able to make the community aware of sort of the work that we're doing here. I think it's really important that the community understands sort of how we are being proactive and sort of trying to be on top of these issues rather than being on the back foot when we end up in a situation where we're looking at mine closure. And then, number 5 there is start that scenario planning, so. Moving on here, the call to action, right? So, I'm sort of with the board, this isn't decision, this is informational, but it's, I'm wanting your support to begin the formal planning now. In terms of, again, not asking for the actual formal today, but just, I'm looking to understand sort of the appetite of the board. No, I think I already have a good sense of it, to support this formal planning and then help us lead this closure conversation into the community with our partners. And also just having conversations with, continued conversations with Climax around things like the third party reporting that you all, the voluntary reporting that you all did last year. Understanding how that reporting went and, this year, that was this year? Holy
Yeah.
Moses, that was this year, okay,
Last time it's not.
yeah, oh, that's right,
May.
yeah, that was in May?
May 9th.
Wild, but yeah, understanding how that reporting went and just again, being sort of doing our part to be the diligent partner that you all are in reporting out to us, right? You have quarterly stakeholder engagements with us, but just making sure that we're also sort of making that a two-way street.
We keep using words like stakeholders and partners, aside from hospitals, schools, city, county,
Not the hospital.
no hospitals, not part of
CMC, Lake County School District and us.
Summit County.
I'm just saying that the money that comes from the mine in this county only goes to the school district, to us, and to CMC. That's all I'm saying. So yes, there are lots of other
In the sense of like planning and like who, power numbers, it takes a village, like if we're looking for grants to help
Yep.
these things and it's not just us asking,
Yep.
it's like, well, that's why I bring like, the mine is straddles multiple counties,
Yep.
employs people from,
Yeah.
gosh, Chaffee, Eagle, Summit, Lake,
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah, so and other partners in my mind include again, organizations like an EDC, organizations like SCED, organizations like or being able to engage with people like Rebecca who kind of have a lot of industry knowledge and can ask the right questions. Again, that's where going after planning grants to be able to engage someone to help us that might not have that relational tie that we do, being able to get a little bit of that third party impartial to be able to ask questions and think about things from a variety of different ways. That's the variety of partners that I think about, but your point's well taken that it's like, yeah, there is this opportunity to sort of think about Summit and others, but I want us to have a really strong plan, especially for Lake County government.
I think it's good for Lake to do it. I mean, this is not a new conversation by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
I think it's a new level of attention, which I very much appreciate. This is a great conversation. This is sort of the most robust amount of information I've seen on a slide presented to, you know, from your departments to you guys.
That's actually scary.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't
you know, this is, we've had, like, the way that the housing coalition came about, that was kind of an exercise in this, to talk to a community about coming around a prioritization of saying what matters to us, right? So that was 2015 working group, came out of the community partnership panel. We went through each of our counties and said, hey, what's something that you feel like really matters to you right now? And affordable housing, not surprisingly, bubbled up to the surface. Doesn't mean that there wasn't a whole lot of other things going on, but it was a tangible project that folks could rally around and understand, what do we do? And it was an understanding of saying, this is where we are on the spectrum of creating affordable, accessible housing in our community. We didn't even have guidelines around that at that point, right? It was zoning. So there was a stipend, you stood up a cohort of people, you kind of came to the point like, oh look, we're gonna have this coalition now. It makes sense to have Lake County Build a Generation sort of house it, and it stepped up from that. So really kind of working through some of those models. It may not have the same name as figuring out your future budget, but there's existing frameworks and there's existing expertise in your community, and that's a lot of what we work with. It's very fundamental in the framework of the International Council of Mining and Metals of how industry should be working with communities. And we use the word capacity building all the time. This is what this means. This is capacity building right here. And what you don't have the capacity for, that's fine. Identify it and say, we need some help. We need to go find an expert in this. Great, you know, that is completely fine. Don't at all feel like this is on your shoulders to figure out, right? I mean, this is a small community, it's a big mining, this is a unique situation, and that is perfectly fine to acknowledge. So I think they kind of almost getting together a group and saying, wow, this is what we don't know, or this is what we don't think we possess in our toolbox, and this is what we think we could probably figure out on our own and keep that conversation going.
I have a question. So, what I feel like I've been talking about all year is that we need to put money towards actually convening that group, not starting with the convening, but finding funding to start the convening so that we're not actually leading it. And what I'm seeing here is kind of back to, it's a different order of operations, so I'm just wondering why, because I don't feel like I've been convinced that like investing in the actual planning and convening should not be our first step.
So my hope is, and sorry, Adam and I didn't recognize the order here, a big part of the intentional hiring that I've done is to get those executive team members on. One of them is specifically has a really strong background in natural resource management with the grant writing piece, manages for the entire western part of the United States. To help start to build that funding and then work with Adam on getting a group together and having the funding for it in place, so we are not funding it. So that human starts on October 7th, and that is one of the big tasks they've been assigned in that new role, is starting to do that work. I did want to at least get this on our radar because us putting money in the mine closure fund, which we need to do anyways, really strongly ties to this. So I want this to be on the front of our minds that we do need to do this. We don't have forever to start planning. I think it's just been like, hey, we can kick it down the road. So with this in place is a good time, I think, to begin to have that conversation of, do we put some money back for some of the planning? Because we may have a grant that has a match to it, but that's really a big part of getting that person onboarded and having someone who can really be a dedicated resource to help us find that funding, has worked with the EPA, really understands the struggles that we'll be working with and looking at, hey, we need to have a plan for the mine closing.
And what about using some of the mine closure fund to start investing in the planning of it is also, like, could we also potentially already have that money?
I need to read the language of the mine closure plan again because
Right.
it really specifically details exactly what you can use it for, and
Yeah.
I'd have to go reread the statute that created it again.
But I'm also hearing that there's potential that we could go back and discuss what that actually stipulates, potentially change that.
The only part of it I know off the top of my head is there's a trigger in there
Yeah.
about when you can
When, yeah.
activate it, and it has to do with the, dive in the budget. I'm not sure if there is
Yeah.
something in there that could say,
Right.
and also future planning regardless of the budget, I have
Right.
no idea off the
And a
top of my
certain
head.
amount.
I'm just more
yeah.
aware of like the when you can dig into it trigger because it's
How,
been done.
how
Yeah.
difficult
Yeah, but I.
would it be to amend the mine closure plan and
I'd have to,
How
this is
many-
not a mine closure plan that is from, don't quote me on any of this, this is like, the bit I've had to do with it was more about triggering when you can dig into
Yeah.
it, when we went through the budget crisis of, what years ago was that?
I don't think it's been
Sixth Street Gym,
Yeah.
touched in a long time. It'd
Yeah,
probably be
in
worth taking a closer look and
the
looking at
last
where we could modernize it.
decade it has,
Yeah.
it's been touched in the last decade.
For the Sixth Street Gym?
When we had the budget discussion in the Sixth Street Gym, whichever year that was.
Whoa, I
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
So,
Okay,
we're talking pre-county managers.
yeah.
In terms of, building blocks in place, this is amazing,
We're getting there.
you didn't have a county manager for some of these conversations, you
Yeah.
didn't have an economic development director, you didn't have an assistant county manager, you didn't have, all of
Yeah.
these things, so I think even though it's a big picture thing, also sit there and give yourself some confidence too, to know that you have a lot more tools in place than we have when we've had this conversation previously, right? That mine closure fund is from not 2011 when it reopened, it's from, the 80s era type thing.
Yeah.
Because it was meant to help with road and bridge and a couple of these other sides of things too. But I don't believe that a lot of activity has gone into it, and I certainly am sure that there has not been a lot of transparency into what it looks like and what it can be used for and how it's intended to grow and how much you wanna have in there, right?
Definitely.
It's a good
If I can-
conversation.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think if I heard correctly, it was started in the 80s, and the maturity journey of the industry and communities around earlier and more often planning around closure and the business case for that is changed dramatically from the 80s. And so I think once you've refamiliarized yourself with that, the company might be nervous around opening up the fund broadly when there is still a 10-year runway and they don't know exactly what's going to happen. So, but the nuance and the sophistication of being able to say, these are the categories which we would like to be able to access the fund, which is planning, paying for some planning, et cetera, et cetera. So you can, I think, it'll take a little bit of time and some elbow grease, but I think you can work on that and be able to access that funding to do the planning that you want to do substantively. And to the point around matching grants, there could be something in there around that. So I think that's definitely a possibility. And the person who said, I'm sorry, I can't see everyone, but the person who said, the capacity building piece, that's 100% right. And one of the beautiful parts of this 10-year runway is the group, whatever the composition is, can say, look at even as a starting point, this PowerPoint and say, we need to learn about these 5 things. And you have the time to dig in and build your understanding and awareness around it and how it relates to your community. So the beauty is that runway, instead of being under the gun and, oh my gosh, they're going to close, our revenues are going down in 2 years, what do we do? And so I think I just want to echo, like it feels big and scary and it is a big deal, but you're in such a good place that this timeline and the people that it sounds like to me that you've got coming on board or already on board. And I hope it does feel like an opportunity instead of like, holy shit, what are we gonna do?
That's where my mind goes. Sorry. I'm like, feel like this is one of those should have been doing yesterday kind of situations, and the closure fund as it sits still just feels like a drop in the bucket. Doesn't feel substantial, nearly substantial enough to me for more than a couple weeks of county operations.
And as a reminder, to Rebecca's point, as things have evolved significantly, there's also the community investment fund been around since the mine did reopen, that is community driven. We have our priority areas, the community is the one that scores those grants. Probably in terms of the cycle, right now, I would say the timing could be not perfect, just because it could be a little bit longer than you need. But obviously, this isn't gonna be a one and done type of planning situation,
Right.
so there's some other mechanisms with which you're able to kind of get some support
Yeah.
in there as well, and we have reiterated that for the better part of 14 years. Patience.
I mean, my impression is that we're all on board with this. We're all on board with it after we took the tour of the mine.
Yeah.
The question to me right now is the funding aspect. It sounds like we've got lots of different options, and I want us to choose an option sooner rather than later so that we can start this work. So I was really hoping that we were going to be able to make the commitment for 2026 to have the funding on board to start the work. So I just think we need to have that conversation next.
How much funding we were talking about? Is there an estimate?
In my mind, I had $200,000.
For planning?
Mhm.
Wow.
I think I'd like to spend a little more time researching that and then come up with an estimate of what we would want to put into the budget. And if it's doable to have that much out of just our general fund, I think there are a lot of bigger picture things to look at. What my hope is that when we run through the budget, we can say, here's what we think we'll have extra, but there are things that come up that you don't plan on, so I wanna make sure that we still have a buffer, so we don't find ourselves upside down, thinking, we have a lot of money we don't have, which happened at the end of
Yeah,
last
what percentage of what we have extra
Yeah.
would be an appropriate allocation?
Yeah.
And when it comes to planning, it's way too early to put a number on anything, because we don't know what other assistance we could find. So we need to identify multiple indicators or metrics of like, okay, this is, what this group's gonna charge to plan this aspect. Oh, here's a grant fund that is not matching, here's one that's matching, so we are gonna need that. We got so many moving pieces to line up before we can come up with any numbers.
Well, that's what it sounds like. If there are grants available, let's go after those grants, and if the mine closure fund is an option, let's leverage that. I'm just saying, let's start putting the pieces together of the funding, and if there are matches, let's budget for those.
Who is your representative? Maybe Adam, but maybe more for the One Community Project Economic Group. It's an action group coming up here.
I'm going.
Resilient economies involved in the extractive industries is a category here, this is you driven, right?
Yeah.
Your words. So, yes, I agree,
Yeah.
like putting some dollars to it that says this matters to us is one thing, but you do have sort of this built-in action plan thing, and I understand that it's not just about the mine is a facet of, and there will be the other pieces of your economy that come up as well. So it's probably not the be-all end-all area to do it, but keeping those messages consistent,
Yes.
right? If you all are kind of doing this in a smaller group and you're kind of saying, yes, this is what we need to do, make sure that that representative in that action group is mirroring that, so you're, in tandem.
And that's just so that you all know, that's exactly why this exists today, is to actually get, also to your point, I mean, I understand where you're coming from and I understand sort of what I'm sensing from you in terms of your energy.
Yeah.
But also you and I have had this conversation in terms of my job description as it's written today is 80% tourism, 20% economic development.
Yeah.
But I'm here giving this presentation for this exact reason, that like, I want to light the fire under all of us around action needs to happen now.
The fire is lit. The fire is lit. Like I do feel a little, I feel a little condescended to by this presentation because I am on board. And so I don't need to be convinced. I want to know what we do now.
It's a team conversation, there's all of us in this room, you know, like if you know everything on there,
I understand,
we all,
I understand, and maybe this is really valuable for you too, and I get that, and I love that, and maybe your fire isn't lit yet. I'm just saying, I personally feel this way, and it's okay for me to be a little frustrated, you know, but it is a little bit like, please tell us what decisions we can make to help move this along.
Yeah.
So that we can make those decisions to let staff move forward with it. I'm sorry, I guess I just didn't need this presentation and I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I love meeting Rebecca. She is an asset that we have never had. I didn't understand this about the mine closure fund, that we could go back and potentially.
I don't know that.
No, I don't
So, you know,
either.
I mean,
I'm just saying, it's not something,
yeah.
it's not a question I would have
It's
ever
your
asked.
mine closure fund.
Yes,
It's on you guys to go dig in there and find out.
yes, absolutely.
So I will commit to, we'll follow up. I don't know that we're gonna have a plan for the planning in a month when the budget needs to be made.
Mhm.
I will say I spoke with Anne and would like myself, if I'm able to get away for that session, calendar's wild, or Rachel, who's coming on in that assistant role, to be the main person kind of there, and Adam will be with her. I think he's also signed up for it, but spoke with Anne about making sure that either myself, the assistant, or our deputy will be at each of the planning sessions, to make sure, you know, that we do have a voice in the one community project planning in terms of not just economic development, but we each strategically have different areas of expertise to make sure that the county, through its executive leadership, has someone at each of those conversation tables. So.
Great, that's great.
what my gut feeling is right now is that we've got, on one hand, a very high level of urgency to move fast.
Yes.
On the other hand, we understanding that we're all at different levels of understanding. We also, I think the whole room realizes how complex and multifaceted this conversation is. And what I would like to see is that we aren't doing anything without thoughtful, deliberate approaches, that we're not shoving staff into positions where they're chasing dead ends. We make sure that anything that we're looking into it's all highest best use of our time, so we're not like burning out on things that might not bear any fruit, I guess is what I wanna be like. Alright, like I've seen it with us in the past where we get like really amped on something and we like wanna charge into it and it's not the most efficient way of diving into something. So I wanna make sure we get a lot of feedback and we get, if something doesn't seem like a smart approach, that the board is being let know. That's just my 2 cents.
There's a chance we may not be able to dip into that fund, I really don't think we should. I mean, it's gonna be a combination of cuts and growth. Those are the 2 components. So, do we need to spend $200,000 to tell us that we need to cut back on our spending, at the same time grow the economy and not on the tourist level?
It's not about that, it's about determining which direction, how to build the third stool. It's that third stool that we don't have, or what do you call it, third leg of the stool that we don't have.
Like industry?
Yeah, that's the question, is like, what is our resilience plan? It's not about, do we need to cut, because no matter what, when the mine closes, it will be a rough transition. But we can smooth it by making our economy more resilient And that not only helps the school district and CMC and the government, but it also helps our actual small businesses and our housing stock, and like, we're all
I
interconnected.
understand that, and that all sounds really good. We've
Yeah.
been talking about that forever, and
There's- yeah.
development of the airport, I mean, the reality
Yeah.
is, we're a tourist-based economy. Whether people like it or not, it's really, I don't see big industry coming here, there's no employees. There's no
Boutique
place for
brands.
people to live, so there's no cheap labor. I don't know.
I-
I'm playing devil's advocate here because I like to look at things as how they are. If we spend $200,000, whether it's grants or this or that, I mean, I don't see how spending that money and dipping into the fund is gonna really tell us anything that we don't know.
Without having the crystal ball, you know, we're probably gonna be told that it's going to take a multifaceted approach, you're going to need to grow all the legs simultaneously, no one pillar is gonna support the structure once the mine is gone. You know, we're gonna need to grow tourism, we're gonna need to figure out what our niche is in industry growth, which, you know, like you said, we don't have cheap labor, so, you know, whether it's, we can leverage our cold temperatures to build a data center or the airport, I don't know. But,
It's a bunch of
a
small
lot of-
businesses
yeah,
growing, and the growth will happen naturally, the housing stock, all that stuff will grow naturally, but
Just, and
I
I just,
liked what Nell said, is we shouldn't be living on that money, that should be for capital improvements and start weaning ourselves off that $5 million over time and hope that you guys go underground.
and I just wanna, and all of
Keep it in
that
the
is,
back of our minds, that it may go underground, but, sorry, Adam.
no, it's, yeah, and
We
again,
start
this,
weaning ourselves, cause we're just, that 5 million, if we lost it today, half of the people and staff would be gone, the roads would continue to crumble, and then we would survive, but it'd be really tough.
and again, that, in my mind, the point of this presentation and the point of this conversation, as I see it, is what you're talking about, and what, Elsa, I would offer what you're talking about, and what you guys just got into a little bit, is it is the same conversation, but not the point of this. Like, the point of this, in my mind, very much is, what is the plan for when Lake County government no longer has that runway? And how are we going to start weaning ourselves off of those resources, not what is the third leg of the stool? And I understand that you feel differently, that you would like to see those resources to focus on what is the third leg of the stool.
No, it's both. I've been working with Mark and Patrick to try to find out how much money we have actually gotten from the mine. Because we receive all of their taxes and then Patrick disperses it to the CMC and the school district. And so they are actually the only ones who can tell us, it's actually Patrick, who can tell us, this is how much we got from the mine, this is how much of it came to us in the last 10 years. So we can see what that average has been and what trends it has actually been, so that we can actually start making some predictive models that help us start to create that plan that weans us off.
Mhm.
I think it's both and.
Sure.
So I'm not just focused on the third leg of the stool or us figuring out our resiliency plan. I also want us to be able to start having the data that allows us to start weaning operations off of the mine and start investing that money in capital. So it's the whole conversation.
Yeah, I think we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
All
I'm
want
not
the same
just
thing.
about the resiliency plan.
But
And
also,
you're
I
just
think that
anxious
what
to
you're
get
talking about
started.
right now is not necessarily a question that has been asked or understood
Totally.
well.
Totally.
And by no means are we sitting here saying, pretend like we don't exist, start living bare bones without our money, but no. It's saying, if this thing kind of goes like this, because that's economics, right, we're a globally driven market.
Yeah.
What's the average, what's the pretty comfy number? You know, some years it's 5 and some years it's 2 is the number 3, who knows? And building a budget based on that data, right? Understand what that looks like, understand where you might have to make some hard choices, but also understand where do we need to invest to bolster this gap,
Yes.
right?
to be honest, that's where I think
Yes.
the $200,000 is well spent. Matt, is like who's gonna actually work, like, cause I really appreciate that you as a county commissioner is taking it upon yourself to like work with Patrick to understand that. But man, oh man, wouldn't it be amazing if there was somebody who could not only do that modeling, but also then communicate with CMC around what smart planning could look like for them.
Yes.
And that again is not anything that I personally, like, capacity building is the best way to describe it, is like, we do not have the capacity. And nor should I think, do I think it actually makes sense? Because again, I've had the conversation with Candace of like, staff could do this work that we're talking about, all of this work, but it's not Adam's staff, it's additional staff, which again, I'm not suggesting we need additional FTEs right now, but we do need to get the staff on board in place and then look at how can we bring in those additional resources so that we actually can do this smart planning from a capacity built standpoint.
And it's
Yes.
not an on-off switch, it sounds like we need to develop a system or like a way of thinking about our whole operations where, if I'm understanding Nell correctly, it's like what Excel was explaining yesterday with shutting the grid on and off, they don't do it on and off, it's like they gotta
Yeah.
ramp these things down, then they ramp these things down, then they ramp these things down, and then back on, and but so it's not,
Yeah, and again,
how does the county operate in that manner where, oh, the mine is not closing, but it's going down to this level? What are our, what's our protocols if we're running at, if the mine's running at 50%, how do we adjust to match that?
yeah, and I'll just, I mean, for me personally, I will speak to something like the resiliency plan that Climax did help a third-party consultant put together. And from my perspective, based on, we had the we just have these fits and starts in our community around, the Climax works with EDC to build this resiliency plan, and then the EDC blows up, and then the resiliency plan goes nowhere. My model, I'll show my cards, like part of why I really enjoy conversations with folks like Rebecca is there a way for us to think about a longer term engagement with a human being who can help us track when we have these fits and starts, and not just like, boom, here's X amount of money for a resiliency plan that ends up being a plan on the page that I actually, other than Nell, I don't know if anyone even really has it, and that's metaphorical, I know that we have the resiliency plan, but you get what I'm saying. It's like from an institutional knowledge standpoint, there isn't anyone that's referencing that resiliency plan that was made in 2023, And it's like,
also okay if it's not accurate anymore,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
who's paying attention to
That's
that?
right.
And again, the point of the resiliency plan was not to say, here it is, set in stone, don't change anything. It says, here's a guidebook, you can change it, you can cross something off the list, you can decide to follow something all the way till the end. You can add something new, this is yours, this is not meant to be, you can say, oh my goodness, this is completely out of date, would somebody mind helping us again? Right? Like, but there's a certain point where you're sort of trying to create as many tools, as many ways of doing things as you possibly can, and then we know that the leadership changes, and so I very much think that, having county managers that have gone through several iterations of elections has been helpful, but that's only
Yeah.
one person, two
Yeah.
people, 1.5 people, right? So I think just acknowledging where you are right now is a start, and it's not a negative, right? It's an acknowledgement, and that's okay.
I'd venture to say there's a lot we don't understand about our own finances that we are understanding, and that is really key first.
Right.
And Will and I have been really delving into what we've done with the budget in the past, what we should be doing, making suggestions about capital investments, about the mine closure. I think we need a little bit more time to get accurate information, to start to think about what could a plan look like. Can we get the majority of it grant funded? And get staff on who can be helping to research, bigger grants than what I think we typically know exist with who we are right now. And it's partially the team that's incoming, middle of next month. So I think there is a lot of information we need to get before we can say, hey, it's time to start running into the plan. But do wanna have this conversation to say, we do need to start thinking about creating a plan for what it looks like. And that is something that we'll really be working on and understanding more information, looking at what it could look like in Q1 of 2026, and also what grants we have available to us. I met with Delaney Deskin this morning to talk about any other options for, some EPA funding, which has been hard to access, but other types of funding that we can utilize to help with this. And she and I had coffee this morning to talk about it, but it is on the forefront. We need a little more time to really be able to say, hey, this is an actionable plan, so we aren't just throwing money and time. It's something that isn't actionable.
I like that, Candace. You guys have been doing a great job. The last few boards were spending money, I watched meetings, they're like, I don't know, do we have the money or don't we? We got 50 grand, how you feeling? So I like that tact, like, let's all understand it. I don't really understand it yet either. So I'm there
We
even
have so much budget time together.
Yeah. So I think that's a good action plan. Let's all understand the budget. Keep in the back of our minds, it's a combination of cuts and growth.
And
That's it.
prioritizing things that like we have to understand, we don't get an option if the mine will close or not someday, it will close someday. And we, that's not a thing we get to choose to not focus on, cause it's
Right.
gonna happen to us whether we focus on it or not, so I
It will,
do
right.
think this
All
is
the
an important
planning that we
conversation.
do and thinking about it now, we're not gonna be here in 10 years. You will be. You guys.
Cause
Adam
it'll
will
wear
be.
me out.
I'll be gone.
But it's,
Without
the-
cell service.
on the positive note, I think hearing from the other people contributing here is that, with levels of interest, where they're at, we aren't gonna be handing off to other boards. We're letting this fall off the radar and then handing the same thing off to other boards. So I'm grateful for the levels of energy that my colleagues are putting into this and attention in the fire that's there, because without it, and how many other things we have come in and out of this room, it's probably pretty easy to let stuff get shuffled to the back burner, and I feel like that might be what's traditionally happened a bit.
It is, and that stuff gets lost. I got 10 packets in my closet. Maybe we try and put some parameters on the budget. Like, here's our budget for the next 4 years, and then going forward, try and put some guardrails on the budget for the future boards. Like, this closure fund or this growth and austerity measures have to be done. I don't know if that's possible, but, cause who knows what'll be in here next.
Might be like suggestions, cause I don't know if we're allowed to tell.
Future boards.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe, but I think more of like, okay, here's a lot of thought and energy and, attention went into this. This is our suggestion for, people far smarter than us, put, these plans in place.
Yeah.
We suggest you follow them because.
And if there's a institutional knowledge of the budget, then future boards they'll be able to look back at all Candace's great work and go, wow, man, they've really got it dialed in, and this mine closure thing is a big part of it, and
Yeah.
we can't.
And prioritizing putting money in the fund and having a plan outside of just putting money in a fund, I think is important.
Awesome.
I feel better.
That's it, that was everything.
Well
Really?
Any other questions? Okay, great, awesome. Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Rebecca, for
Thank you,
being
Rebecca.
involved.
Sure, thanks for letting me drop in some thoughts as you guys are making your plans to plan.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Rebecca, it was nice to meet you.
What is the name of that backpacking company? Did she move from
Symbiosis Gear.
Moab? They come from Moab?
That's a different one, that's a different company.
What's their company name?
Nantucket.
Symbiosis.
Yeah.
Where are they? She working out of her home?
Yeah,
Doing backpacks.
yeah, and she would love, there's this really cool, it's called the the Salt Box, it's in Denver, and it's like a co-working, co-packing facility. And she's like, if you had something like that in this community, it would,
Maybe up at the airport.
If the mine, big if, you know, we were to shut operations down, has there been conversations about like how the grounds are utilized after that, or are other things still able to happen on the property? I ask because in Europe, there's a huge tourism draw for a small town up there where they shut the mine down and have hard enduro motorcycle races on the mine property while they shut it down. It's in Ayersburg, and it's called the Iron Giant. And it's like, man, could we ever do that if like the mine was closed? Like, hey, can we have a big hard enduro motorcycle race up there? Cause there's nothing in the country like it. And
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting like mine reuse plans there where, you know, it can be everything from you know, mail sorting FedEx station to, data centers, all sorts of things that people are.
yeah, cause you've got the electricity for that, but yeah. Wow.
So there's even an amusement park, I think it's a Six Flags, that's like a big, it's I don't know, it's a quarry of some sort, or ultimately, I have no idea what the age of that was. So, but in Colorado, and I say this every single time, I think we have the most evolved and robust reclamation plans. You have to have a reclamation plan before you can actually permit a mine. So there has to be, filed with the state to say this is how this will look like afterwards. You're always kind of looking at that, but then there's a pretty big amount of time afterwards because things are bonded. So if you were to say, take an example of a really small gravel pit instead of this big huge mine, which is really complicated, the state's gonna say, oh, you have this little 1 acre gravel pit, you're gonna mine it for 5 years until you get this out, and then you said you're going to put the slope at 3 to 1, lay it back, it's gonna be rangeland, and we're going to seed it with X, Y, and Z grasses that we say work here, right? So you close your gravel pit, you do your grading, you do your reseeding, then there's still a period of time where that all needs to stick, right? There can't be erosion, the grass needs to grow, things need to feel fine, where then the state will come in and say, okay, your gravel pit looks reclaimed, looks like everything you did in your plan is setting well in the natural elements around it. We will release this bond. And then you are then able to say, oh, we're opening this up to open rangeland,
Oh,
whatever.
jeez, that sounds like a incredibly lengthy process.
It is a long process, that's why I use the example of something a little smaller, because when you think about the footprint of our mine, we have a huge acreage, but then we have the elements of it that are active currently, right? And so what the big mines really do is it's talking about concurrent reclamation. So as you're working through a space, you're also putting the topsoil back down, putting the seeding back down. We have a great exhibit up there, the little National Mining Hall of Fame exhibit, up there. But it's more of like the broader context. So to answer your question, I think that there's a lot of really interesting ways to reuse a mine, or all of them are gonna work perfectly here, who knows? But it's a longer process. I wouldn't say that there's like an immediate turn it off, turn this back on lever, because of that middle ground time that, it takes to kind of release that bond and make sure that everything is doing what it said it to do from, a natural standpoint.
And just so you know, I mean, that's the stuff I have talked a lot with the OREC office about within the state of Colorado, because there are a lot of examples of different OREC, which is the Office of Outdoor Recreation. There are a lot of other really great examples in states like Pennsylvania, where they have a lot of old coal mining operations that have closed, where they have been able to turn those into massive economic drivers from the standpoint of outdoor recreation space.
Yeah. And
so this is, because this conversation was so robust, didn't even really go there.
Yeah.
But the point is that there is lots of land that Freeport, McMoran, and Climax owns throughout the community that very much would be it would be one of the main conversation points for this group of like, okay, great, when we scenario plan and when we get to end of mine, where do we wanna put the like just bad example, but where do we wanna put the Six Flags, where do we wanna put the Moto Park, based on all of the properties that Climax owns?
Road Park's not a bad example.
Yeah, but you get my point,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
there's like, cause it's not just the area up on top, they also own parcels all throughout Lake County, so
Yeah.
trying to come up with a plan with Climax around, you know, they want to, when they're exiting a community, they want to see all of those properties go the best use, so planning out like where's an area that could work for housing, where's an area that, you know, and I personally am the kind of person that thinks our community coming up with a really nice plan and presenting it to our partners is a way better approach than us just going like, hey, now help us figure this out, and I feel like that has happened to now quite a bit in this community.
Hey Dale, I got one more question for you. What happens if Molly goes low enough where it's not feasible to mine anymore? Cause that could happen. We could have a global downturn and,
Yeah.
I mean, it's low probability, but how long would it take? Would the mine shut down or, I mean, cause that should be something in the modeling, like, it could shut down next year.
I mean, you know, I think the most recent example, which wasn't necessarily about price, it was about sort of working, was COVID, right? We curtailed production by 50%. You know, from a communication standpoint, so you know, my first call after we told our employees that's what was happening was to the county commissioners. You know, this is the next call that everyone gets, and then it goes to the broader group of our community partnership channel and make sure that that's being used. But, you know, so that was a 50% reduction
Yeah.
in operations, and it took a while. Took a while to kind of get back up to speed again. You know, it has happened, 2016 was a really low year. It was a little bit related to molybdenum, it was a lot related to oil and gas, it was a global kind of, you know, situation. So, it could happen, I mean, there would be a lag, and again, I think it's great that you're asking these questions of your treasurer, but look at some of those pinpointed years and see where that lines up with when it actually impacts your taxes. And that's also what you want to be tracking, because it's not an overnight situation, which also means it's not an overnight recovery. We may be then
It's like 2
saying,
years.
hey, things are looking
3 years.
good, we're cranking, you will not necessarily see that again for that same lag time, just like you didn't feel the pain for that lag time. So I think the more you can sort of look at
Trends.
the trends, the
Yeah.
bigger picture trends, and you have, you know, a chunky years now, that's been through a lot of really interesting times.
Yeah.
Right? So not to say that it's necessarily accurate, I mean, if you look at some of these, you know, graphs we use, it is very unpredictable, right? It is unpredictable, I'm sure that everyone would love it to be more predictable, but this is global economics and mining, and it's not necessarily driven by us, I mean, you're selling to the global market and their demands.
Yeah.
So it's very, very complex.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and again, I think the thing I wanna say is, we absolutely loved hosting you up there for your visit, when you came, you know, earlier this spring. But we also acknowledged there's a lot of information, right? So the door is open, you're digesting this now, you have a lot more information, you have a lot more questions about the bigger picture. You know, come back and ask us how that goes, or come back and say, you know, I kinda understood this part, but now I wanna understand more, because now I'm seeing it kind of play out. Feel free to, don't feel like that was a one and done, you
Could
know?
you give us a ski tour or a snowboard, split board tour?
Oh, look at you being inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is you know, it's not an easy conversation to have, but I think it's an important conversation to
time.
have, and
Yeah.
it's refreshing and it's welcomed, even if it's hard.
Yeah.
So it's better than not having a conversation, right? And you do have a lot more folks at the table to help you out than
Yes.
we had, you know, in place before, so it's a good.
We are on our way to a more professional organization.
That takes time.
To quote Adam.
Yeah. Okay, any further questions? Or I just wanna say thank you to everybody who came in here and all the great information, illuminating, different views, different approaches. I wanna thank Elsa for the hard work she's put into this, following up with the treasurer to help get us to that point where we actually have hard numbers that will help us make some of these decisions.
Easy.
Yeah, and yeah, look forward to a lot more of this.
Same.
Alright, well, it's 12:01, we'll conclude this work session of the Lake County Board of County Commissioners.